Hello viewers, welcome to K Diagnostics. Dio here. Today we have a 2007 Ford Edge with a 3.5 liter. The customer complaint on this vehicle is the ABS light and the traction control light remain on while the engine is running. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to confirm the customer's complaint. After confirming the customer's complaint, we're going to connect a scan tool to the vehicle to scan all the modules in the vehicle. We're going to focus on the ABS control unit because that's the light that's remaining on the dash. We're going to read the codes out of the ABS control unit. Once we read the codes, then we will know what directions we're going to go so we can fix whatever that's causing the ABS light and the traction control light to remain on while the engine is running. So now let's go inside the vehicle and confirm the customer's complaint. I'm gonna start the engine so we can confirm the customer's complaint. So right there, as you can hear, the engine is running and the ABS light remained on. So this light over here and the light back there is the traction control light. So we're gonna ignore this tire pressure monitor light. We're gonna focus on this ABS light and the traction control light that remaining on when the engine is running. So let me zoom you guys in so you can see. So it's kind of going on and off, but right there, as you can see, the ABS light is on and the traction control light is also on. Okay, so customer's complaint confirmed. So now I'm gonna turn off the engine. I'm gonna turn the key on. I'm gonna get the scan tool connected to the vehicle and then I'll bring you guys back up so we can scan the ABS control unit. We have one trouble code in the engine computer and the trouble code is P1000 OBD2 system checks incomplete. And it looks like the same trouble code is also set in the transmission control unit. Now, we're not gonna focus on this trouble code over here because we are here to fix what's causing the ABS light to remain on. And the check engine light is not even remaining on while the engine is running. Now, this code over here can be set if the battery had been disconnected at some point, or if the battery had died. This trouble code can be set because this trouble code sets when all the monitors on the vehicle haven't run. Okay, so this is not a problem. We're gonna scroll down and focus on the ABS control unit. So over here we have two trouble codes in the ABS control unit and our trouble codes are C1175 and it says left rear speed sensor input circuit fault. Okay, so I mean this code is pretty self-explanatory. There's a problem in the left rear sensor circuit. Now the other trouble code is C1236 left rear wheel speed sensor input missing. So this first trouble code over here can cause the second trouble code to be set. Now, I hope this is going to be an easy one. Usually when I see these trouble codes set, what causes this trouble code to be set is usually a defective wheel speed sensor or a problem in the wiring between the sensor and the ABS control unit. The other thing could be a defective wheel bearing or a missing sensor magnet on the bearing. So those are the things that usually cause these trouble codes to be set. So before we focus on these trouble codes, let's scroll down and see what other trouble codes we have in the other modules. So we got some tire pressure sensor fault codes over here. We got 0 code in the OBD, so the generic side, there's no code there. So that's good. All right, so let's go back to the ABS control unit. Now, I'm pretty sure this is gonna be a quick one and an easy one. Like I said, these codes are usually caused by a defective sensor or a problem in the wiring or a bad bearing. Usually what I see is the magnet on the bearing would fall and then the sensor would not be able to read the wheel speed because the sensor's job is to read the rotational speed of the wheel so that it can notify the ABS control unit of how fast that specific wheel is spinning. okay? And it does that by sensing the magnet that passes in front of the tip of the sensor. And as that magnet passes in front of the tip of the sensor, when the wheel speed increases, the amplitude of the sensor also increases. Okay, the amplitude and the frequency of the sensor output increases, and that information is sent to the ABS control unit. And when the ABS control unit receives that information, that's how it knows how fast the wheel is spinning. And in case of slippage, if you're driving on a slippery road, if one wheel starts to spin faster than the other, that's the ABS control unit is gonna look at the sensor input. Based on the sensor input, it will know which wheel is spinning faster than the other, and that way it's gonna activate the brakes to slow down whichever wheel is spinning faster than the other, and that's how the driver can keep control of the vehicle. So that's basically, in a nutshell, how an ABS system works, because there is a sensor that sends the speed of the wheel, and that sensor sends a signal to the ABS control unit, and the ABS unit takes appropriate actions based on the input it's receiving from the sensor. And if the input is not there, like over here, if the ABS control unit does not receive the input from one specific sensor, it sets this trouble code over here, okay? And that can be caused by a bad sensor, a bad wiring, or a bad wheel bearing, okay? So, and this information over here on some vehicle, the information coming from the wheel speed sensor can also be used by the transmission control unit for proper gear selection, okay? To like upshift or downshift properly, because I know on some vehicles, the ABS control unit shares this information with the transmission control unit also. So the ABS control unit gets the info, it processes that info, and it can also share it with the other modules. Okay, so knowing that we have an input missing coming from this sensor, I mean, this wheel over here is not producing an input, okay? What we're gonna do is we're gonna go straight to this ABS control unit. So I'm gonna click on it. I'm pretty sure this is gonna be an easy one. It's probably gonna be a defective sensor or a defective bearing. So we're gonna go to data display. Now I wanna look at my rear sensor data pins. Since we have a code for the left rear sensor, so we're gonna customize this list. I just wanna look at the rear speed sensor data pins. So left rear, and what is the right rear? So right here, right rear. So I just wanna look at these two data pins. So we're gonna graph both of them. So now what I wanna do is, I'm going to go outside the vehicle. We're gonna leave the key on, and we're gonna spin the wheel. Okay, the rear wheels. We're gonna spin the left rear, and we're also gonna spin the right rear. If the sensor is good, when we spin the wheel, there should be a signal over here on this graph, because when the wheel starts to rotate, the sensor will start creating a signal, okay? So now let's go outside and test the sensors. All right, guys, I got the vehicle on the lift. Now we're gonna spin the wheels so we can confirm if the left rear wheel speed sensor is not producing a signal. So the right rear wheel speed sensor is good because we didn't have a code for it. So basically, when I spin this wheel, there should be some activity on the right rear wheel speed graph on the scan tool. So I'm gonna show you the scan tool right now. So on the right side of the screen over here is the graph for the right rear wheel speed sensor, and then on the left is the graph for the left rear wheel speed sensor. When I spin the wheel, there should be some activity over here, because when the wheel spins, the sensor starts to create a signal, okay? So let's spin the wheel. Okay, just a couple times. Now I'm gonna show you the scan tool. So right there, as you can see, we have some activity over here, so that's good. And the amplitude of this signal over here is going to vary based on wheel speed. Okay, so the right rear sensor is good. This tells me that the sensor is good. The wiring between the sensor and the ABS control unit is good, because this information the scan tool is showing us is coming from the ABS control unit. So the ABS control unit is seeing the sensor input. Okay, so now I'm going to spin the left rear wheel. So this is our problem side. So let's spin it. Now as I'm spinning it, I'm going to show you the scan tool. So I'm spinning it right now. As you can see, we don't have any activity on the left wheel. I'm going to spin the right side. So look at the right side now. I'm spinning the right side. We have some activity over here. So I'm going to spin the left wheel. I'm spinning the left wheel. Nothing is happening. Okay, I'm going to show you how I'm spinning the wheel. So we're spinning the wheel right there. I'm spinning the left rear wheel, and we got 0 on the scan tool. Okay, so once again, this has confirmed to us that we have a problem in the left rear wheel speed sensor circuit. Okay, now what could it be? Is it a wiring problem? Is it a sensor problem? Is it a bearing problem? That's what we're going to find out next. So now I'm going to tell you what we're going to do next, so we can find out if it's a sensor issue or a wiring issue or possibly a bearing issue. So now let's look at the sensor wiring. Alright guys, so here's what we're going to do. We have to find out if our problem is the sensor or the wiring or the bearing, because when we spin this wheel, there is no signal being generated from the sensor. Okay, so here is our sensor. So here is the wheel speed sensor. It's pretty easy to access, so that's good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to follow the sensor wiring. So the wiring goes across there, it comes over here, and then here it is. So the white connector is the connector of the wheel speed sensor wire of the left side, and then the black one is the connector for the wheel speed sensor wire of the right side. Remember when we were spinning the right side wheel, there was a signal being generated, but when we spun the left side, there was no signal. So here's what I want to do. The quickest way to eliminate a wiring problem is to basically swap these connectors. Since we know that this sensor over here on the right side is good, what we can do is we can disconnect it and connect it on the harness side of the left wheel speed sensor. After connecting it here, we're going to spin the right wheel speed sensor. So basically, the signal that the sensor is producing, it's going to go to the left rear harness. As we do that, we're going to spin the wheel. That signal is going to go to the ABS control unit, and our left wheel speed data pid should start updating. If it starts updating on the scan tool, that will tell me that the wiring is good. So basically between here and all the way to the ABS control unit, the wiring is good. Then at that point, our focus is going to be the sensor itself or the wheel bearing. Okay, so that's a pretty easy one. What we're going to do right now is I'm going to disconnect the left wheel speed sensor. So we're going to disconnect that. Now, the good one is this black one, which is the right one. So I'm going to try to connect it there. As you can see, it cannot go because there is a little tab over here, okay, that's supposed to go on this side. Now, since we can't plug it in, what I'm going to do is we're going to use some jumper leads to basically connect the pins on the sensor wire. okay, to these two wires over here on the harness side. I'm gonna get these two connected, and then basically what we're doing is we are bypassing the sensor on the left side of the vehicle with the sensor on the right side of the vehicle. That's all, okay? So I'm gonna get some jumper wires over here. We're gonna jump these two wires together, and then we will spin the wheel to see if our left side wheel speed data pid on the scan tool will start updating, okay? So I'll get some wires over here, jump it, and then we'll see what we find. So now let's do that. I'm gonna use these test leads over here. So we're gonna connect to the harness of the left side wheel speed sensor, okay? Now, some of these sensors are polarity sensitive, so you have to make sure that the wires you're connecting are basically matching, okay? One example would be like the wire next to the latch. You have to make sure that you also connect it to the wire next to the latch on the harness side or the sensor side, okay? Because not all of them are polarity sensitive, but some of them are. And on other applications, it might require clearing the trouble codes before you can start seeing a signal being generated from the circuit you're testing, okay? So let's make sure that these test leads over here are connected. So now I'm going to use these wires to connect these two together. Okay, and you also have to know what sensor you're testing, because these ABS sensors are not the same, okay? Some of them are like old school type permanent magnet signal generating sensors. Some of them are like magneto type sensors. So it helps to know the type of sensor you're testing, because all of them are not the same. So here is my quick little setup over here. So this is how I quickly test ABS sensor wiring. So basically right now the sensor on the right side is going to be sending its signal on the circuit of the left side, okay? So when I spin this, we should see some type of activity on the left side graph. And if we do, that will tell me that the wiring is good. So basically from this point all the way to the ABS control unit on the left side circuit, the wiring is good. So now let's look at the scan tool graph. Alright guys, so right now we don't have any activity on both graphs. The right rear wheel speed sensor and the left rear wheel speed sensor. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin the wheel. Oh, look at that. So this one didn't even require clearing the codes. Okay, so right there, as you can see, we have some activity over here. So having this activity tells me that the wiring is good. So basically between the sensor and the ABS control unit on the left rear wheel speed sensor circuit, the wiring is good. So this circuit over here is good. So the problem is probably the sensor or the bearing, okay? Because remember, like I said, we could have a missing magnet on the bearing, okay? So this is good. Our circuit on the left side is good. So now let's focus on the sensor and the bearing. So we're gonna remove the sensor and look at the magnet on the bearing, because usually I see magnets come off or fall sometimes. If the magnet looks good on the bearing, then the problem will be the sensor. So now let's do that. Let's remove the sensor so we can inspect the magnet on the bearing. Alright guys, at this point our problem is either gonna be a defective wheel speed sensor or a missing sensor magnet inside the wheel bearing. So I'm gonna undo the sensor bolt so we can remove the sensor. Okay. So it looks like the bolt is coming out pretty easily. So that's good because that bolt looks rusty, so I don't want it to break. Okay, so here comes the sensor bolt. So now we're gonna remove the sensor, so we're just gonna pull it out. So here it comes. That was pretty easy. All right, so now we're gonna inspect the magnet inside the bearing. If the magnet looks good, then the problem is just the sensor. So I'm gonna zoom you guys in so you can see. So yeah, there is our magnet. The magnet is right there, so I'm gonna spin the wheel. As you can see, that little plate over there, it has a little metal particles on it, as you can see right there. So yeah, so that's the magnet. I hope you can see those tiny little metal particles stuck on the magnet. So if this is not broken, the problem is the sensor, like no questions about it. So I'm spinning the wheel. Our magnet looks good. Okay, I'm gonna remove those little metal particles on the magnet, but basically the problem is just the sensor. Okay, our magnet inside the bearing looks good. Since the magnet is good and the bearing also is good, because the bearing doesn't have any play in it and the bearing feels good, so the sensor should have produced a signal. Since it's not producing a signal, so what do you think the problem is, guys? Our sensor is defective. Okay, so that's good to know. I'm gonna clean that magnet over there. I'm gonna remove those metal particles, and then I will order a new sensor. I'm gonna get a new sensor, I'm gonna install it, and then I'll bring you guys back up so we can verify our repair, and then this vehicle should be out of here. So it's just gonna be as easy as replacing a wheel speed sensor. Okay, so I'm gonna disconnect my jumper wires here. Let's get our jumper wires out of the way. So that's good. This test over here just confirmed to us that the circuit is good. So the sensor wiring is good. We looked at the magnet inside the bearing. The magnet looks good. The bearing also feels good. The bearing doesn't have any excessive play in it. So the problem is a defective sensor. I will order a sensor and then I'll bring you guys back up. Alright guys, we are back here on this Ford Edge. I did receive a new left rear wheel speed sensor, and here it is. So this is the part number. Now I'm going to remove the old one. So the old one, I mean, we already got it removed, so I'm gonna get it out. It's already disconnected. I'm gonna get it out and then I will install the new one. After I install the new one, this is pretty straightforward to install. So I'm gonna install the new sensor and then I'll bring you guys back up so we can verify our repair. So I will do that and then I'll bring you guys back up. Alright guys, so I did install a new left rear wheel speed sensor. So here is the harness and here is our sensor. So right there, as you can see, it looks brand new and shiny. Okay, I also did clean the magnet inside the bearing. So I removed those tiny little metal particles that were on the magnet. So everything looks good. So now we should be good to go. So now let's look at the scan tool and erase the trouble codes. We're gonna look at the codes again, memory codes. So right there, we have the left rear wheel speed. We have the right rear wheel speed fault code because I was doing the testing, I disconnected it. So we're gonna ignore that. Let's clear all the codes. Okay, so the codes are cleared. Let's try to read the codes again. Let's see what we got. So right there, no codes present, so that's good. So now I'm going to graph the rear sensors right there. So let's graph both of them. Okay, so now let's spin the right side. So we're spinning the right side. As you can see, the right side is updating. That's good. So now let's spin the left side. So we're spinning the left side right there. Left side is updating. So that's good, guys. This is fixed. Okay, so I'm gonna lower the vehicle. We're gonna test drive it. And right now when we test drive the vehicle, the ABS light should be off and all should be well. Okay, so let's test drive this and then we're gonna come back and wrap up this video. So this is fixed, guys. This just needed a sensor. So let's take this for a test drive. Alright guys, we are back in the vehicle. So now let's start the engine and see if the ABS light will remain off while the engine is running. So let's see if we made the right call. So right there, success. This is fixed. So as you can see, the ABS light remained off. The traction control light is off. So this is good, guys. This is fixed. So I'm gonna bring up our scan tool here. We're gonna graph all the wheel speed sensors. Okay. And I said we were gonna test drive this, but there is no need. It's getting late here. I'm just gonna go back and forth here inside the shop. As we go back and forth, all these sensors should actually produce a signal. Okay, we should see some activity on all the graphs. Remember before, the left rear, this one over here, is the one that wasn't working. Okay, so let's put our scan tool over here. So let's back up. I'm just gonna back up. So we're just backing up in the shop. Okay, so we're gonna go forward. Usually when you have a defective sensor, the ABS light will come on as the wheels start to spin, because that's when the sensor starts to produce a signal. Now let's look at the graph on the scan tool. So right there. And as you can see, all these signals are basically mirroring each other, which is good because they are technically spinning at the same speed. I mean, all the wheels. Right there, guys. So this is fixed. Okay. So the problem was a defective wheel speed sensor. As you can see, all the sensors are now producing a signal. This one wasn't producing a signal before. Now it is. So this is good to go. I'm gonna turn off the engine so that we can wrap up this video. Alright guys, so this was a quick and easy one. This is how you fix one of the issues that causes the ABS light and the traction control light to remain on the dash as the engine is running. So I hope you liked this quick and easy video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumb down. But if you do, you gotta tell me why so we can make better videos in the future. If this is your first time here, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you can get notified every time I upload a new video. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave them in the comment box. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.